Welcome back to the third and final part of our chat with Sara Hutton on all things banking for law firms. Well, welcome all, and welcome to one of our regular coffee breaks. We're doing something of a departure this time, and we're having our first special guest. And our special guest today is Sara Hutton of the imaginatively named Sara Hutton Consulting Limited. As many of you will know, Sarah's background is the RBS NatWest Group, which she escaped from probably 3 years ago now. So welcome, Sara.
One of the things that I know from your past history is that you had oversight of some firms that were not very well run at all and got in quite a stressed situation. What do you think the outlook is for the next six to 12 months in the legal sector in respect of potential failures?
I think the care needs to be taken most with mixed practice firms rather than niche, because niche have got a much better handle on what their cash cycles are. So whilst they've got challenges, the mixed firms, there are lots of little hiding places where, you know, problems could be arising and not being spotted quickly. And particularly if a lot of the funding is via an overdraft, and you've had good months of collection and your focus tends to be on short-term cash balances and cash management, that slightly longer view of a rolling sort of 13-week type cash flow and possibly 3 to 6 month cash flow gets lost or gets forgotten after the initial panic of the first month or two of lockdown. And I think that one big mistake that a lot of firms made last time was not acting quickly enough to look at their staff costs and where people should be considered to be made redundant. And a lot of the low-hanging fruit tend to fall on the support staff and redundancies there, which is, you know, all well and good and probably, you know, timely, if not beyond the time that some of those support staff should have been, or their services, not individuals obviously, should have been looked at. But I think even in the fee earner cadre, an awful lot of firms have got better at performance tracking and monitoring, but not so much actual management and managing underperformance. Well, this is a time when really you can't, you know, whilst with the best will in the world, you want to look after your staff, and a lot of staff have been very loyal and have been real troopers in the current situation. But to save the viability of the firm and the sustainability of it, and to come out with it, of this, without having a whole decade of lost opportunities, which a lot of firms lost after or during the last recession. Tough decisions now, when you've possibly got the funding to pay, you know, sensible redundancy and look after people you're having to say goodbye to, including using the government loan scheme to help fund that. It's much better to do that now. And I know one of the other challenges is about losing experience and will you ever get that back again? But you've got to have a firm to worry about that, and that, you know, making sure that you've preserved the profit, the medium to long-term profitability of the firm, I think is pretty key at the moment.
I just have a sense that with some of the smaller firms, the bounce back loans may actually just delay the inevitable.
I'm sure that it will. It's like in the last recession, a lot of secondary lenders filled that gap and have continued to do so since.
And when you start to look a few months further ahead, are you expecting that the banks will be able to finance the upturn when it bounces back, or are they going to be so stretched now, having all the demands that the government's put on them?
That is a very interesting question, and I was only talking to a former colleague about that this morning. I think it is going to be a very mixed picture. Speaking to a couple of banks last week, they are already thinking of opening for new business in the next few weeks. So they definitely seem to have the capacity, the appetite, and the balance sheet to want to continue to grow. Others that have perhaps got still challenges on their balance sheet, or have frankly done an awful lot more of the government-backed lending just because of their market shares in the SME market. I think they'll find it more challenging to return to any sort of proactive lending quickly, and that there'll be an awful lot of managing of stressed businesses. As you know, last recession, I was in a specialised unit trying to help businesses that had suffered in the recession. They're already talking about bringing back a similar sort of team this time. There are banks that know that they've got quite a big exposure to the healthcare sector or hospitality, or some of the others that have been quite badly hit, are already thinking, well, how are we going to help firms and businesses through all of this? And it is that they are looking at this with good intentions.
I think that's worth just stressing. So I don't think you were ever involved in GRG, weren't you? You were in the good side of the bank. You weren't involved in GRG, which is worth stressing.
Yeah, I was not involved in any of the actual sort of recovery and restructuring parts of any bank. I was in the bit before that because we set up a triage unit where it was very much they were in mainstream lending and mainstream credit, but they just needed that extra support. And if we could give that early, then we did prevent an awful lot of businesses ending up where we didn't want them.
I think triage is an important concept and an important thought process for people to go through, because there are those that will be fine anyway. There are those that will never be fine, and I think it's beholden to all of us to do what we can for those where we can make the difference between the two situations. Make sure that the ones that have a chance come out of it smelling of roses.
Yeah, and also help them make some of the more critical decisions. It's all too easy to reach for the opiate that is debt, and there are a lot of secondary lenders that would quite happily throw an awful lot of money at law firms with quite high or eye-watering margins, and that isn't the first go-to place that any business should go to. They need to explore a lot of other options first.
And if they don't get it from their own existing banker, you've got to ask why. And is it worth going to somebody who is going to be charging those rates of interest?
Which is why I'm keen to get people and law firms in particular thinking more about what they can do now, alongside all the other more operational things that are occupying them day in, day out.
Yeah, well, I've been saying for some time that if you look at the profit and loss accounts, the hit is being felt now. On cash flow terms, it'll probably be felt for most of them in the first part of next year. But most of what the government has done has just been to spread the pain. That hit is still there, and as you say, people need to do what they can to mitigate that in the short term.
And what about then the idea that we've talked before in this forum that there probably will be casualties, or certainly firms who've decided that having survived 2008 and then this, that they've had enough, and we've talked about aging partner profiles, so there's probably some quite interesting deals to be done. And do you think banks would be interested in helping fund those firms with good business models to acquire?
I think that's a really difficult question on the basis that it depends on the size of the business and who their incumbent bank is. If it's a larger firm, i.e. 10 million turnover plus firm, and it's with one of the clearing banks that have an appetite to fund management buyouts of that size, which not all do, or acquisition finance teams, and some of them have shrunk into effective non-existence below the large corporate end of the market, then great. I think trying to go to a clearing bank as a new to bank acquisition funding deal, you'd be struggling. Having said that, there are quite a lot of other funders out there that do seem to have appetite for backing law firms. I think the chances are that more deals will have to be done with a good proportion of deferred consideration.
So, Sarah, thank you very, very much for that fascinating insight into the banking world, the people we love to hate, and perhaps we hate them a little less as a result of what we've heard from you. So, Sarah, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
With it, but you haven't been too disparaging about anyone there anyway.
I've tried to watch my P's and Q's, definitely.
Now we can get you to do the real bit, and we're still recording.
Yeah. Turn that record button off. Turn that record button.